Hello, I'm very excited to talk to you today and to bring you a very good, well, I won't say old friend, but a good friend who's in Manila for just a day. Andrew Stevens, CNN's Business News anchor. Andrew, it's good to have you here.
It's been a long time, Maria, and it's always great to talk to you.
A really long time, and since I have you for only a few minutes, I wanted to talk to you about the economy. Actually, it is about the business of business on both ends. But on the economy, the last time we really worked together, we worked on the Asian financial crisis.
1998, 2000.
So I guess part of it is when during that time period, I was thinking, my God, this kind of lack of transparency, the lack of governance, these kinds of things happen in Asian countries and developing countries. But for some reason, I didn't think they happened in mature economies in the U.S. And then a decade later, we see the housing crisis hit the U.S. I mean, what do you think? What is this? Where are we? What happened with that?
Well, I think that probably the first point to make is the difference between the Asian financial crisis and what happened in Wall Street in 2008 and what's happening in the sovereign debt crisis now in Europe, is that Asian financial crisis, it was a lot about, as you say, lack of governance,
yes,
lack of transparency, cronyism, lack of democratic institutions, where money moved quickly,
yes,
went to the right place for the wrong reasons, and then moved out equally as quickly. And economies were built up which were unstable, unbalanced, and when international investors saw that, they started pulling their money out rapidly. Hot money flowed out,
yeah,
and we saw the massive trade imbalances come home to hurt economies, and
right,
we had this sort of ripple effect around the region.
Right.
I think what we've seen in the US, it wasn't illegal, as illegal and as obviously untransparent as it was happening in Asia, but nonetheless, the institutions we thought were there to protect us in the US,
right,
didn't catch what was going on.
Right.
So at the end of the day, it is the same sort of governance issue, and we've seen the result. What we've seen now is some sort of attempts to clean things up. A lot has been done with new regulations.
Right. Well,
but
can I just ask you first, in 2008, I mean, do you feel like we've gone through the worst of it now?
Yes. Yes. Well, I think we have to make a distinction between what happened in 2008
right,
and what's happening now.
Okay.
2008 was a Wall Street crisis in many ways.
Right.
It was a financial system crisis where all of a sudden there was these toxic assets,
yes,
buried deep within the financial system, particularly in the US, but flowing to Europe, which all of a sudden became exposed,
right,
which caused a massive loss of confidence. So banks stopped lending to each other. The financial system ground to a halt.
Right.
We were staring into the abyss.
Right.
And we got out of that by the US government throwing hundreds of billions of dollars at the problem. So that has, some people would say, that has just produced a medicated high. Has it produced a longer term solution?
Right.
That the jury's still out on that.
Right.
But certainly the alternative of not doing anything would have meant a much bigger economic collapse.
Right,
exactly.
Right.
So
in many ways, actually, for me, it seemed very similar to 1997, 98 in Asia. It's just it was the United States. I mean, again, it was these things that were hidden from view that regulatory bodies should have picked up, didn't pick up, and then it caused a massive lack of confidence. Money flowed out.
I think there's a case to be said of due diligence here. I mean, what was happening in Asia was so under the radar, it was very difficult to spot. Whereas
you might even say hidden on purpose.
Hidden on purpose.
Yes.
I think that would be a very fair way of putting
yes,
it.
Yes.
Where on Wall Street, with the subprime loans and
yes,
rebundling these obviously bad investments and giving
right,
them a AAA credit rating,
right,
it was more transparent if you'd bothered to look. And many people did see what was going on,
right,
and warned, and no one took any notice because there was this sort of trust, if you like, in the system.
Right.
So it's the difference between, as you point out, what was hidden, deliberately hidden from view,
yes,
and what was going on that people chose not to look at
right,
in the US.
Turned a blind eye.
Turned a blind eye to,
yeah,
because everybody was making money for a long time.
Correct.
And just going on to say what's happening in
Please.
Europe now.
Yes, what's happening
It's
in
a
Europe
different situation. It's where basically governments talk about governance at the highest level.
Yeah.
They have been they've been borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, spending and spending and spending, and creating more and more budget deficits. They're living beyond their means, and they have been for years. If you look at France, for example, the last time they balanced the budget was in the 1970s.
Yeah.
So they've just been living on borrowed money, and finally it's all come back to haunt them because the global economy, because of 2008, slowed down, and then the cracks started appearing.
Right.
And then we see these massive debts.
To a degree, though, couldn't you say the United States was doing that as well?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The difference is that there is a confidence in the US, an investor confidence in the US, which is shown by people still buying US treasuries and things. Because it is the world's
Right.
biggest economy, because it's such a powerful animal, they figured that was a safe place to be. And if you saw what happened to treasuries, the treasury price was going down and down and down because
Right.
so many people wanted to get in.
Right.
Whereas countries in Europe didn't have that sort of copper bottom blue chip approach. Greece, Portugal,
Correct.
now Spain and Italy.
China, though, one of the major investors in the United States.
Yes, and China constantly lectures the US on
Correct.
how to run their monetary policy, and whether the US listens or not is a moot point. I mean, China's, they're inextricably linked, these two. They sink or swim together. And for China, they're not doing it as a favour to the US. They're
Right.
they're parking these enormous amounts of surpluses into where they think is the safest place, which
Correct.
is US treasuries.
So what is the impact of all of this on Asia and Southeast Asia in particular?
Yeah, well, I interviewed the Ayala brothers
Yes,
this
you
morning, which was fascinating, and they were very, very bullish about the Philippines, and by definition also almost Southeast Asia, because you have a relatively strong domestic consumption model. So you are seeing people buying. They're talking about the GDP per capita in the Philippines
Yes.
is getting towards a critical $2,000 a year level where there is disposable income. Yes, this region will be affected by no exports to Europe and fewer exports to China.
Yes.
But I actually asked them, what's the impact going to be of the global geopolitical picture on something like the Philippines? And they say limited. Now, they're a fairly shrewd operation, and they see this growth in domestic consumption. And you can look at Indonesia, for example,
Yeah.
last year growing at over 6%.
Correct. In fact, it was interesting to me last year. People were talking about Indonesia and the Philippines as places to bring money to, as a safe place to move into.
Well, a lot of it's got to do with investment grade
Right.
quality. It's not there in the Philippines yet.
Agreed.
You don't have the state, or the Philippines doesn't have the status of investment level.
Well,
Indonesia has just got that.
has just gotten that. Yeah.
And when you get that, when the credit ratings agencies decide that the buying assets on buying debt here is investment grade quality, people say you will see a lot more foreign investment coming in here. There will be a lot more investment coming in. But that could take another year or so.
Agree. And the interesting thing is, again, this is almost a lesson from the 97, 98 financial crisis, because even though you had 90% of the Indonesian companies technically bankrupt, that 200 million population of Indonesia bolstered the economy, and now it is the economy to look at in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, but I think Indonesia is as you covered it so closely, and as I covered it as well. Indonesia was much more a political story as well, wasn't
Yes.
it? Because you had a strong man. Suharto was in for 30 odd years.
32 years.
32 years,
Fought, yeah.
and had created an economy which was just unsustainable.
Yes.
And everybody knew it but didn't want to say it.
Yeah.
And when the economy and when the rupiah collapsed,
Yes.
and when prices were raised for this,
Oh my
that, and the
God!
other.
It was incredible that time period. The prices of everything changed every day. You go to a restaurant and the menu changes from tonight to tomorrow night.
Yeah.
The rupiah went from 2,400 to the dollar to 14,000 to the dollar in
And
the
that
span
hit
of a
real
few months.
people.
Oh, definitely.
And real people
Yeah.
reacted by going onto the streets, and we saw a revolution.
Absolutely.
So in the West, if you like, you don't have the same, you have a much better level of democracy.
Yes.
So you don't, you had the Occupy, which is more a sense of frustration between the haves and the have-nots.
Yes.
But
The 99%.
The 99%.
Yeah.
But if you look at, Occupy has died down because they didn't have an answer.
Yes.
They had a problem which they wanted to highlight,
Yeah.
but they didn't have an answer to it.
So what do you think is going to happen next? I know that this is
this
a
is
question
crystal
we
ball.
love to ask other people. So now I get to ask you, Andrew.
Absolutely, yeah. So I knew this one was coming. Well, I mean, if you look at it economically, I think that the US is over the worst. I think Europe is still it's on a knife's edge.
Yeah.
And even the IMF will still say it's on a knife's edge. There is a lot more confidence that has to go back into the people think that Europe can deal with it, the sovereign debt problem. I don't think that confidence is there in any measure at all. I mean, if you look at what's been happening, the European Central Bank has been offering very, very cheap money.
Yes.
It's been picked up by the banks who are then buying the bonds.
Yes.
So they're buying the bonds. So you get
It's
this
going around in a
it goes
circle.
around in
Yeah.
circles.
Yeah.
And is that a house of cards? A lot of people would say yes, it is.
Yeah.
So I think at the moment to say Europe's out of the danger zone, it's way too premature. The question is what happens if it's not?
Correct. What's
And-
the implication for us?
Well, the implication, if there's a collapse in the Eurozone, which personally I don't think there will be,
Yeah.
because I don't think, and a lot of people would say, the politicians just have not been tough enough. They haven't really taken that quantum step. But if there's a collapse of the Eurozone, all bets are off. I mean, it will be ugly there, and that will, again, the money will. Where will the money go? Asia, maybe.
Yeah.
China. I mean, if you look at the relative strength of Asia, Southeast Asia, Northern Asia to Europe, you'd have to say Asia's a better bet.
Japan actually did better last year than we expected, given the tsunami. I mean, given the impact of the tsunami. Is that the way you see it? Or?
I think the tsunami, or the reconstruction of the tsunami, has made a big difference. I think Japan is facing long-term critical problems. If you look at the level of their national debt, 200%, an aging population, a strong yen. So those great manufacturers, the Sonys and the Toyotas of the world, they're moving offshore. They're building their cars in China, in the US. So a lot of the money is not being repatriated. You're not having manufacturing jobs there. And this is a strong export economy. So Japan has massive problems. And what Japan's been very good at is kicking the can down the road. And if you look at the revolving door of prime ministers, nobody's prepared to pick it up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let me ask you again, I'll shift you further. Technology is changing nearly every industry globally. I mean, you have a small company of 13 people, Instagram, bought for $1 billion.
$1 billion by Facebook.
By Facebook, right? What impact do you see technology having on industries, on the economy now?
Well, I mean, we've seen the massive increases in productivity, for example. So technology for the good is an amazing power.
Yes.
And it does make people more efficient, no doubt about it. I think it makes people work harder. I think because you're always connected, and I think you would share that with me, and I think most people in your newsroom would share that, because we're never disconnected from what's going on now.
Yes.
But I just wonder, if you look at that example you chose, $1 billion for a company of a handful of people with no real track record. It's only been going for 18 months. $1 billion, is that a bubble?
Yes. What's the value of things like this? How do we quantify it? How does it change business?
I think it was, that story happened because we have a company like Facebook, which has so much money.
Yeah, exactly.
And they can't afford not to see what the new big thing is, what the new competition is going to be. They have the money to buy it and bring it into their own. And this was, Zuckerberg sort of said as much when they did the IPO. Yeah. We have money, we are going to be looking at everything and see what we like and buying it. So this, I mean, given the fact there's this phenomenal growth in things like Facebook, the social media, that they had the money, they can do that, and that will continue to happen. But do you remember 2000, the dot-com bomb?
Correct.
The phrase was the new paradigm.
Yes.
Clicks versus bricks. And it was a very convincing argument. And lo and behold, it didn't work in the end. There was a bubble. I mean, it worked essentially, but we all got too excited about it. Is it happening again? I mean, many people would say it is happening again. I mean, there's going to be a few winners, but there's going to be a lot of losers as well.
I'm interested in seeing how you see the world now. I mean, this kind of stuff going on, how will it impact the economies that we were talking about?
With things like the Instagram acquisition.
Yeah,
And
technology and this kind of possible
Yeah.
bubble. I mean, where do you see this?
It-
I know I'm
it's-
asking you for a crystal ball. So.
It's very difficult to. I think technology obviously is a power for the good.
Yes.
And
or can be
it
for the
can-
good, can be for the bad.
Yeah, I mean, well, if you take somewhere like China, which tries to limit information exchange, but China obviously is using technology to its own advantage in its own economy.
Yeah.
Again, we are on the cusp of this whole new way of delivering all sorts of services.
Yes.
And you would have to say, on balance, optimistically, this is a strong move.
But it seems like many industries, obviously the music industry has felt it already. Industries are having to change their paradigm.
Yep. Their business model,
Their
everything's
business
changing.
models, right?
Yeah.
And we're living through it now. I mean, we're the ones that you think we should be watching. Now I'm asking you to be a crystal ball again. Don't you like this?
I know. but news media is a fascinating example,
Perfect.
isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah,
How
because-
was your job changed?
Yeah, how will my job change?
Yeah.
I mean, at the moment, I have 2 one-hour shows a day at a regular time.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what the viewership is doing as far as are they choosing to go online and watch it because it's available online and watch it at their leisure. But the way information is being digested by the next generation is so different to our generation, to be
Correct.
honest. I sat in front of a television and watched the news at 9 o'clock. Sad but true.
I still do also.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
yeah.
But
It's
it's sad, but in many ways, Maria, you know, we're sort of dinosaurs almost. Well, I'll speak for myself here because I know you've got this whole new venture.
But the kids, I mean, the 20-somethings are teaching me something new every day.
It's how they're consuming news,
Yeah.
which is so different to how we consume. And the trick and the challenge is for media companies to get hold of that and how to deal with it. I mean, you've got a company which is small and nimble, and you're harnessing something.
Yes.
Media will be watching to see what happens there and working out how do they fight that. What traditional media has at the moment is reputation.
Yes.
I mean, personally, I think there is so much citizen journalism now. I think there's never been a greater need to have professionals filtering the news and providing as much as they can an independent, unbiased account of what's been happening.
Yes.
Because there are so many competing stands on all sorts of
I
political
agree.
issues.
I believe the same thing. I think that you do need that credibility
Yes.
of traditional journalists, but I think we need to evolve in some way to deal with this new technology.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you are the evolution. Rappler looks like it is one of the ways that this is evolving. The question becomes, how does traditional media respond? I mean, if you look at all the CNNs, the BBCs,
Yes.
well, beefing up their .com operations, beefing
Yes.
up their online operations,
Yes.
looking at social media. How can we harness social media?
You know, what's interesting to me is the traditional news groups, like big institutions, like governments, the hardest thing when you move into social media is to actually let go of control. Letting go of control, and it is the hardest thing to do, but in so many ways that seems to be where it's headed. Anyway, I know that I have you for only a short time and you've got to run to the airport. Tell me about Ion the Philippines and,
Ion the
and what
Philippines,
exactly
yes.
you're doing in Manila before I let you go.
Okay. Well, yeah, we as you know, CNN does a special series which looks at a particular country.
We're
And
very happy to have you
and,
here.
And it's the Philippines,
Yeah.
and we haven't looked at the Philippines for
A long time.
for far too long. I would say. So we're here with my colleagues. There's Anna Coren is coming down. She'll be interviewing the president. Another one of my colleagues, Kyung La, has been around the Philippines pulling together stories. I've been interviewing the business leaders. So it's really taking a look at what's happening here now. And I think certainly there seems to be, with the new administration here, I would say there does seem to be a much more optimism, certainly at the business leaders level, than I've seen in a long time.
Is the optimism realistic?
Well, that's the question. I mean, I guess we've been here before, but there have been moves made. It is about building institutions in the Philippines. It is about building civil society here. It is about making people accountable. That doesn't happen overnight, but it can happen. And again, I get the impression that there is an optimism here which suggests that the government is moving in the right direction, and it's taking the people with them, and it's taking business with them.
Fantastic. Andrew Stevens, it is very good to have you here. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you, Maria.
Join us again next time. Andrew Stevens from CNN, The Business of Business.